Hello, welcome back to my fave fanfics. Here, I post, well, my favorite fanfictions, if that wasn't obvious. I do hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Please like and subscribe for more content. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome, my dear faves, to the fifth part of What If My Hero Academia Reacts to Hunter x Hunter. Credit goes to Makifinity. Chapter 6. HxH is X sneaky. Previously, 3 cards shot out in rapid succession, planting themselves firmly into the man-faced ape disguised as human. In turn, HxH caught the cards headed towards him with ease. The man and the creature in his hand fell to the ground, as guitar music began to strum. HxH held up the 3 cards, a laugh coming from Hisoka, who meticulously shuffled a deck of cards. I see, that settles it. You're the real one. HxH dropped the cards, an unreadable look on his face. His boldness to do that was quite unsettling, All Might said, clearing his throat a bit as he watched with slight uncertainty. Let's hope he ends up disqualifying himself again this year. I already don't like this weirdo, Mina said, pouting a bit. Examiners are hunters selected by the committee to perform this duty without pay. In the back, the applicants watched him with various expressions of awe. A vulture circled ahead. A simple hunter, which we ourselves aspire to be, would have been able to block that attack. I shall take that as a compliment. However, should you attack me again, for any reason, I will report you for attacking an examiner. And you will be immediately disqualified, HxH warned the man. Are we clear? Quote. Sure. The guitar music continued to strum as the title revealed to be, HxH is X sneaky. A few eyes narrowed at the sight of the title on screen. I'm getting a bad feeling, Uraraka said uncomfortably. Aizawa's expression remained blank, yet an uneasy and suspicious feeling rose in his gut. The foggy area near the tunnel was shown. The 368 applicants who made it through the long underground tunnel find themselves in an unexplored land teeming with strange creatures called the Milsea Wetlands. A dark underbrush was shown, deathly silent. A lizard with a horn protruding from its forehead lay on a branch, before rising and crawling down quickly. In the distance, the applicants ran in the dark, condensed environment. The visibility is incredibly low, the examiner wasn't kidding. If they get lost, it'd take a miracle for them to find their way back, Mike said as his eyes scanned the area. Feet pounded the damp, murky grass as the applicants ran. Now please, be sure to follow close behind me, HxH said again, running as straight forward as he did before. Hanzo and Gitaracker ran in proximity, both focused on keeping ahead. Next to them a man ran, the monkey on his shoulder letting out a noise. Tonpa and the 3 brothers ran beside each other as well, along with several of the veteran applicants. Gon and Kahlua were shown running, with expressions considerably lighter than the many surrounding them. In the back, Hisoka ran at a casual pace. Determined grunts came from Leorio as he ran with vigor, alongside Kurapika. In the sky, a bird let out its caws, its tongue split in 2 at the end. Everyone's so focused, Midoriya said, eyes glued on the screen. At this point, there's more at stake rather than just failing the exam. If the examiner was as serious as I believe him to be when he announced the warning of serious injury or death, their lives are certainly at stake if they do not tread carefully, Nedzu thought to himself. The wetlands appeared, the area darkened from the little amount of light. Slowly, the fog thickened to the point of almost no vision. "The fog is getting thicker," Kurapika mentioned as they were running. Hisoka's back was shown as he was running. "All right, this is our chance," a man with a firm expression and ponytail said. His other two partners turned to him in question. "We'll take advantage of the fog and get rid of him." Quote. On his other side, two more listened and they silently agreed. The men continued to run, watching Hisoka, who didn't seem to suspect a thing behind him. "They're planning an attack on Hisoka?" Momo muttered. Kaminari shook his head a bit. Did they miss the part where he made that other guy's arms disappear because he bumped into him? Quote. Killua's eyes sharpened, alert. "Gone," he said, turning to face forward. "Huh?" Quote. "Let's go up front more," Killua told him. "Okay. We don't want to lose sight of the examiner," Gon responded. "I'm more concerned with increasing the distance between us and Hisoka." The men were shown, openly eyeing Hisoka as they began to catch up to him, running nearly side by side. Staying too close to him is dangerous. Hisoka remained with a cool and narrowed expression. "I can smell it. Kid's sharp." "That Hisoka seems to ooze danger and attract it," Gran Torino huffed. "Smell?" Gon inquired. The young boy closed his eyes and gave the air a sniff. He opened them back up with a questioning sound, looking back at Hisoka. "I don't think he smells," Gon said obliviously. "Leorio. Kurapika. Killua says that we should move up." Gon called out, blind to the rising tension in the air. "Hey, can't you feel the tension in the air?" Killua chastised him at the loudness. "Moron." Leorio called out from where he was running with Kurapika. "If I could, I'd already be there." Quote. "Are those two idiots serious?" Bakugo scoffed. Zero facepalmed, letting out a low groan. "Don't worry about us." Kurapika reassured. "What?" Gon said back, concerned for his friends. "Let's go, Gon," Killua said to him, before picking up the pace. Gon turned back to Killua. "Oh, hold on." The young boy sped after his friend. Kurapika and Leorio ran together simultaneously, amongst the thick fog. "We can't even tell which way we're going," Kurapika said. "It's okay. As long as we don't lose sight of the guys ahead of us," Leorio told him. "That's not really reliable. Who's to say they will not get lost?" Iida said. Recovery Girl let out a frustrated sigh. "It's always simple mistakes like these that lead to trouble." Ahead of them were the shadowy figures of the applicants, any recognizable features obscured by the thick fog. Suddenly, as they were running, the heads of the figures rolled off, one by one, before the bodies too disappeared. Leorio and Kurapika slowed to a stop, the former letting out a shocked cry. "What's going on?" Before them, floated large enticing strawberries. What is that?" Quote. Sounds of shock resonated through the hero students. They kept their eye on them the entire time, didn't they? "How in the world?" Nijire said, sitting forward in her seat. "Some dummy is definitely going to take that obvious bait," Toga said chipperly. An applicant walked forward from Kurapika's right, before falling hard, letting out a cry. Leorio startled before looking up in the air. The man cried out, stuck between sharp teeth in the jaws of a dino-like beast, a turtle shell on its back, the berries from before propped on its back on sticks. A name briefly flashed on the bottom. Noggin Luggin Tortoise. "That thing's got him," Kirishima said, fists clenched. That thing, it's from the intro, Ojiro said in remembrance. The bait is obvious, but it doesn't take much to create a distraction that invokes confusion or curiosity. With the few seconds of time it buys, it can create a disaster, Sir Night Eye said, expression stone as he watched the man flail on screen. Applicants began to cry out and run in fear and shock at the sight. The beast reared its neck down, jaws opened wide as it captured another person. Leorio and Kurapika stood back to back, amongst the fearful shouts and stampeding. "This looks bad," Kurapika said, stepping a bit closer to Leorio as he looked around them. More of the beasts began to close in around them, footsteps vibrating the ground. The beasts came closer, letting out roars as they gazed down upon their next meal. "No one's going to help them?" Exclamation mark. Mineta shouted. Satatsu's warning in the beginning of the exam rang in their memory, more louder and clearer than before. "Shit, guess this thing is the real deal," Dabi said, sitting up a little in his seat. The applicants were shown running upon an area with purple-yellow spotted mushrooms all across the ground. As a few of them ran, they stepped directly onto them. Upon touch, the mushroom released a yellow gas into the air. Sounds of confusion came from the applicants as they all stopped, at the sight of the yellow gas. The confusion quickly morphed to panic as they all began to double over and sway. One fell to the ground, mushrooms covered over his head. Jiru lightly slapped a hand over her mouth, feeling completely disgusted. "Did what just happened?" Sato said dumbfoundedly. Aizawa couldn't help but grimace at the scene. Situational awareness is crucial. "I pray the consequences would never be this deadly for any of you, but being careless of your surroundings can be fatal," he said to the class. As the groans and moans of pain rang out, the mushroom appeared again. At the top it wrote, "Claymore Mushroom." The people laid on the ground, heads covered in mushrooms, as the group of applicants continued running feet away from them. One of the veteran applicants, Todo, looked back at them without concern. As the applicants continued to run, one of them spoke up. "Huh? What's that?" A pink butterfly, decorated in patterns and loops, appeared fluttering its wings in a dizzying manner. "It's a butterfly?" It flew in front of three applicants, who had their gazes glued onto it, before all three of them collapsed unconscious. "Oh come on. That's not fair," Kaminari argued to himself. "Even the smallest, and seemingly insignificant thing they happen to overlook can bring them down, Mr. Compress said, tilting his head slightly. "The entire ecosystem is working against them," Midnight said, shaking her head slightly in disbelief. The rest of the applicants stepped past them without losing pace, continuing behind the examiner. They laid on the ground, as the rest of the group advanced, disappearing into the thick fog. The butterfly appeared, gracefully flapping in the air, before text appeared. Hypnosis butterfly. The fog laid thick, everything in the surrounding area covered completely, nothing around them recognizable. The three brothers stood, looking around them hopelessly. "Damn it. Which way are we supposed to go? Did we lose sight of him?" Quote. Deserved. "I still remembered how these losers bullied that kid," Hagakuri exclaimed. "Now please," the voice of Satats cut through. "Be sure to follow close behind me," the voice said, in the distance, a shadowy figure waving around abnormally. "Over there." The three brothers ran along with other applicants who had also gotten lost. Their voices cheered, excited at having not lost the pathway. "That's completely not suspicious at all," All Might said dubiously. Hell, they're all falling for it as well, Aizawa said, shaking his head bitterly. Their figures ran ahead before dropping out of sight, their screams cut off. One of the brothers stopped immediately in his tracks, shocked. The three of them stood at the edge of a deep crevice, looking down at the applicants who had fallen, and died impaled on the spikes on the bottom. The only sound heard were their shaky exhales. Several cried out in shock at the scene. They're dead, Mirio said, swallowing thickly, expression grim. This isn't right at all. The exam needs to have measures in place. It's not right for all of these people to die like this. Momo stated adamantly. These deaths were preventable. I don't understand why they're letting these people die. It's one thing to teach a lesson, but they're not learning anything by being dead. So why? Midoriya said, gripping onto his pen a little harder, face scrunched in thought. Now please, cough. The voice of Satats rang out. Above them, the crow from before cried out. Be sure to follow close behind me. Caw. The text appeared above, Ruse Raven. That thing can imitate human speech? One of the brothers said. That was close. Yeah, they watched the bird flying ahead closely. That is quite intelligent. Luring them over the edge that will lead to death, then swoop in and feast on the corpses. It may not be able to kill a human with its own strength, but that doesn't matter as long as it's smarter. All for one lightly praised, thoroughly entertained. That psychopath, All Might lightly cursed, nails digging into his palm trying to squeeze down his anger and pity for the deceased applicants. Gon and Killua were shown running on their own in the dense fog. I hear people screaming all around us, Gon said. It just means that we have to stay on guard, Killua said, focused. I wonder if Leorio and Kurapika are okay, Gon voiced, looking around as he thought of his friends. The two continued to run, their feet shown on the ground, before crossing what seemed to be a line. No, Kirishima murmured, watching with worry. Aizawa's back straightened a bit more alert. The both of them stopped in their tracks, realizing something was off. Oh, suddenly, the ground descended with them, as they both cried out in shock. Their cries died down the farther they descended, and a large tongue came out, as a mouth shut close with a resounding thud. An enormous frog was shown, unblinking, burrowed into the ground. The description showed, frog in waiting. It crawled out of the hold in the ground, heavy steps shaking the ground as it waddled away. The frog ate them, Eri mumbled, wrapping her tiny arms around herself, her lips trembling sadly. Aizawa looked between her and the screen. They'll be okay. They'll find a way out before the stomach acids can begin to break them down and digest, he offered, clearing his throat stiffly. Eri looked at him, confusion in her eyes. Digest? Quote. A roar was heard, as Leorio dangled precariously from a stick that was lodged in the mouth of the man-eating tortoise. Leorio! Kurapika shouted. Leorio watched, his expression slightly fearful, as the creature bared down on the stick in its mouth, the wood bending and snapping. Sharp teeth came ever closer to Leorio's hands still grabbing onto the stick. The creature swayed its head back and forth, in turn swinging Leorio around, attempting to get him to drop the stick. Leorio cried out, as he clutched onto the wood for dear life. Kurapika sprang off the ground jumping high into the air. Why isn't he letting go? Exclamation mark. Mina cried out. With the way it's swinging its neck so hard, if he lets go, there's a good chance he'll break several bones, Recovery Girl said. The blonde brought out his nunchucks, aiming directly at the creature who was glaring at Leorio's figure. Kurapika held out the weapon above his head, ready to bear down with all his might onto the unsuspecting beast. With precise aim, he shoved the weapon directly into the eye of the animal, which had closed its eyes seconds too late. It roared out in pain, letting go of the stick, which in turn dropped Leorio to the ground. The man fell straight to the ground with a grunt, as Kurapika landed on one knee, before standing up, nunchucks in his hands. "Leorio, now's our chance," Kurapika told him, before dashing off. "Why yeah," the man agreed, before getting up and fleeing as well. "Well, it certainly won't be able to see for a while," Ciro winced at the attack. "Hopefully they'll be able to catch up to at least the back of the group," Iida said, pushing his glasses up. The frog continued to thud against the ground, slow and heavy in its steps. Its face blued, fluid dripping out of its nose, as it let out a sick-sounding gurgle. Its eyes watered as it threw up beige-colored vomit. Amidst it, Gon landed on his chin, flopping to the ground. Kahlua landed on the ground in a criss-cross position as well, grunting slightly on impact. The frog walked off, leaving the two behind without any more interest. Gon rubbed the back of his head, laughing sheepishly as he watched it. "That's absolutely disgusting," Magna said, making a face. Aries' eyes lit bright, her lips wobbling as if she were trying to smile. "Guess he didn't like the way we tasted." Kahlua brought out a familiar orange can. "It was this," he said. "That was from Tonpa," Gon said, recognizing the can. "Guess it saved us." "Well, I could have escaped without it," Kahlua said casually, dropping the can on the ground. Gon turned to look around. "I'm still worried about Leorio and Kurapika," he said to Kahlua. The white-haired boy stood up, back to Gon as he only turned his head slightly to look at him. "Forget about them. Let's move. We can still make it right now." Kahlua began to run, not sparing another word. Gon began to follow him, before stopping, eyebrows drawn. The green-haired boy turned around, as if sensing something wrong. "Deku too. Zero's going back," Bakugo said, crossing his arms. "They're fine now though. He's just going to get himself more lost," Kaminari huffed in slight frustration. Back with Leorio and Kurapika, the two ran in the woods, without any direction. "We've lost sight of the front runners," Kurapika said. "Which way should we go?" Leorio said, his tone grim. As they looked to the side, they noticed to their left in the trees stood a figure with distinct colored hair. Hisoka stood with his back turned to them. Leorio noticed, before halting, reaching out a hand to do the same for Kurapika. "Stop," Leorio said in a hushed manner. Kurapika looked at him. "Over there," the man continued to whisper, pointing at the site. "Seriously? That guy's been nothing but absolute trouble and evil. They should have kept going," Shinso said incredulously. "I'm with you on that one, kid," Gran Torino grumbled. Kurapika turned to look. Hisoka stood unmoving, his back facing towards the applicants from before that were conspiring, weapons bared in their hands. They circled the magician, the atmosphere tense and heavy. "I've been thinking since last year, that you aren't hunter material," the man with the ponytail, the ringleader, said. His partner spoke up, the staff in his hand pointed. "We'll spare you if you swear not to take the hunter exam again." I certainly agree that Hisoka does not seem to fit the standards of a hunter, from how young Kurapika explained it. Openly challenging such a man, however, is not the best of decisions, All Might said, remembering Tonpa's warning to avoid Hisoka. "Sure," Hisoka said airily. They all muttered in shock. "Huh? I'm passing the exam this year, so I won't need to retake it," he told them. "Passing? Idiot." One of the men spoke up, pushing his weapon forward. "Look at this fog. It's impossible to determine which direction the main pack went. It means we've all failed the exam. Quote, this is not going to end well." Hisoka's not even concerned about the number of them, Aizawa said. He'd often seen the posture of powerful villains, who had their victory secured before the fight had even begun. "I want to write it off as foolish arrogance, but I'm not so sure," Vlad hesitantly added. Guitar music strummed as Hisoka let out an amused chuckle. "So that's it, having already failed, you wish to play the examiner?" The men watched him apprehensively, all armed and ready. "Hunters require prey. Why don't I play examiner, and judge whether you're hunter material or not?" His golden eyes opened, and he held up a 4 of spades. "Those cards make no sense. We've seen him shuffle and bend them, yet, he used them to kill that man-faced ape. How can they be sharp and sturdy enough to act as deadly weapons yet?" Midnight said, frowning. "I guess a magician truly never does share his secrets, Mr. Compress chuckled. Provoked, the man in the ponytail yelled out, "Shut the hell up." The other men cried out as well, all of them brandishing their weapons as they ran to attack Hisoka at once. Hisoka merely watched them, observing as they came at him from all sides. The screen turned black, before Hisoka's hand appeared, holding the card between his middle and pointer finger after images appeared. A swift, clean slice was heard, a perfect circle drawn red appearing. "What?" Juru muttered, confused about what was happening. "He's going to absolutely crush them," Shigaraki said, letting out a raspy laugh. Nedzu's expression was unreadable as he intently stared at Hisoka's move. The screen faded, showing the circled applicants, nearly a foot away from Hisoka. The man held his hand out, air whooshing. Blades of grass blew past at their feet, as the men remained unmoving. With a flick of his wrist, Hisoka turned the card around. The men grew lax, their weapons falling to the ground, their bodies close after. The ringleader watched, taken back at the sight. His eyes were wide and fearful, mouth gaped open as he struggled to say a word. "Now then," Hisoka said, turning to him. Did he cut them all?" Ojiro gaped. "This isn't good at all," Tokiyami said. "Do you think he killed them as well?" Kirishima said, voice rising. No one said a word, hoping what was on screen did not appear as it was. The man could only fall to his behind, trembling. With a fearful whimper, he turned onto his hands and knees intent on crawling away. The smile never left Hisoka's face as he stalked after him. The man continued to whimper and cry cowardly, as he no longer had the strength to stand and run but could only crawl, while Hisoka calmly walked after him, his strides even. Help, help! Exclamation mark. The man began before a sound could be heard. His eyes seemed to bulge out of their sockets, before glazing over as he fell, the 4 of spades planted in the back of his skull. His body dropped with a dull thud, as Hisoka was shown, his arm still in the air from aiming the card at the back of the man's head. He killed them," Iida said, teeth gritted together. "That vile, disgusting villain." The teachers watched, expressions solemn at the realization. "He's hardcore for sure. Something about him gives me the creeps, though," Toga sniffed, eyes narrowed. Kurapika and Leorio watched, eyes wide and mouths open at the scene. Hisoka's hand extended and removed the card with a sickening sound from the quartz. The two continued to watch as Leorio began to sweat. Hisoka's narrowed golden eyes shifted over like a snake, aware of the two. "Well?" quote. The two startled, realizing he noticed them. "Care to play, Examiner?" Hisoka said, voice dropped to a dangerous purr. They stood defensively, while Hisoka stood among the dead bodies, calm as ever. A dreadfully tense silence seemed to practically echo as reality sunk in for the hero students. "It's not even been that long in, like what, 10 minutes and so many people really died," Ojiro said, voice dull and blunt, his posture tensed. Aizawa sat in his seat, expression pinched. Death was not anything new to him. Underground heroics revealed the plethora of gruesome and bloody crimes that were often abandoned or cast over to them by daylight heroes that found the jobs too obscure to boost their popularity, or simply not worth the struggle. No matter how familiar he had gotten with death, never would he allow himself to become desensitized to it. As he looked over the pale and distraught expressions of his students, his heart ached and he could only wish that they would always remain naive and ignorant to death. He knew the irrationality of it, but he couldn't help but hope. An overview of the wetlands appeared once more. Out of dense fog, Kahlua jogged, with his skateboard under his arm. He let out a sound as a relieved smile came on his face. Before him were the main group of applicants running along, following the examiner closely. "All right. We've caught up to the main group, Gon," Kahlua said, eyes glued to the scene. The white-haired boy turned his head expectantly, but was met with nothing but air. "Huh? Where'd he go?" quote. "Gone," Uraraka sharply gasped. "You don't think he'll actually find them, will he?" Jiru said, worry lacing her tone. "His senses are abnormally high. I doubt that he won't," Tokiyami stated. The curled toe shoes of Hisoka stepped past a dead applicant. Leorio breathed heavily, sweat beating down his jawline. Kurapika remained still, barely breathing as his gray eyes intently watched Hisoka's approaching figure. Hisoka's footsteps seemed louder than before, the grass beneath his foot rustling with each step he took. Leorio. "On my signal, we run in opposite directions," Kurapika told the taller, voice lowered so as to not alert Hisoka. "They should have ran when they had the chance," Shinso groaned miserably. Ida's frown seemed to deepen. "After all those people he slaughtered. Aizawa's dark eyes zeroed in on the back of his neck, and he shivered. Retreating when faced with an enemy that holds much more experience and skill is the only rational choice to do. From what we've seen of Hisoka here, these two attempting to challenge him would lead to nothing but their deaths," he said, voice coming out at an almost growl. Iida could only look resigned, unable to argue against the truth. "What?" Leorio looked down at Kurapika next to him. "He's more experienced in real combat," Kurapika said. Hisoka continued towards them, at a leisure pace, completely assured of himself. "The two of us won't stand a chance against him." Kurapika continued. "We can't afford to squander time in a pointless fight." Leorio looked away from Kurapika, expression tense as he looked again at the fallen applicants on the ground. Hisoka's small yet sly and smug smile seemed amplified, as he stepped closer and closer. "Hisoka poses a very serious threat," Netsu murmured. "I have a feeling that the exam will be nothing but mere child's play, for him," the principal thought, expression ever so serious. They should be doing more running than talking right about now, Kaminari said, voice rising to a nervous quiver. Kurapika watched with eyes blown wide and wary, body drawn tight. Hisoka's hand that remained at his side flicked out a card between his clawed fingers as he kept advancing. Lirio remained guarded yet unmoving, sweat marking his face as his teeth clenched. Hisoka stopped in his tracks, the hand holding the card rising upward slowly. A flock of birds screeched as they broke into the sky, seemingly startled. Hisoka's hair waved in the wind. "Now!" Kurapika shouted. In the same instant, the two sprung into action, both running in opposing directions. The wind rustled Hisoka's hair once more, as their footsteps pounded the ground. They retreated quickly, the fog hiding their figure. Hisoka let out a hum, his lips twinging into a grin. "I see, smart move. He certainly could have caught him if he wanted. I guess because they haven't challenged him, he's spared them in a way." Gran Torino grimaced, the words leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Majority of the students and teachers sighed, realizing they had been holding their breaths from the tension. Lame, Toga yawned, slumping in her seat. The magician began to laugh to himself, resting a hand over his face. Two squirrel-like creatures with slitted pupils looked up from where they had begun to feast upon a dead applicant. They ran away, chirping. A raccoon doing the same ran away at the noise as well. Hisoka's expression was nothing short of crafty as he looked off to the side. Before he could make a move, he stopped, narrowed his shifting to the side as he let out an inquisitive noise. "Ew, that was entirely too creepy," Hagakure exclaimed with a slightly exaggerated gag. All Might eyed the screen dubiously, feeling on edge by Hisoka's mannerisms. A figure marched solidly through the fog in his direction. The redhead merely watched, with a pleased smile. "I just couldn't do it," Lirio said. He came to a halt, a large stick bared in one hand. "This may not be my fight, but it's not my style to close my eyes and run away," the bare-chested man said, finishing his sentence with a shout, eyes flying open with an intense determined look. "Lirio!" Kurapika shouted as he ran, noticing his friend had gone back. With a war cry, he ran towards Hisoka, raising his arm. Hisoka stood with a hand on his hip. "I adore that look on your face," he purred out. "Seriously!" Exclamation mark. Bakugo hissed, clenching a fist. "Lirio!" Majority of the students cried out. "Oh, this is rich," Dabi snorted. Present Mike inhaled sharply. "That guy, there's no way he's going to challenge someone who effortlessly killed all of those people. Unarmed and bare-chested, there's no way," the blonde voice hero said, voice strained as his stress levels rose. Grabbing the stick with two hands, Lirio sped up, anger flashing in his eyes. Hisoka simply grinned, golden eyes revealing nothing. Lirio swung down the stick at Hisoka, only for the man to dissolve into nothing but smoke. "What?" Lirio said, as he began to fall to the ground. Hisoka, who had been to his front, was now by his side, moving without any effort behind him. With an eerie expression possessing his features, Hisoka reached a hand out towards the back of Liorio's neck. The heroes in the crowd tensed, as if ready to jump to their feet and through the screen. "Oh, he's dead meat. Fight back, you idiot," twice shouted at the screen, waving his arms in front of him. An absolutely idiotic and reckless move, that's going to cost him possibly his life, Aizawa thought, feeling a bit helpless as he watched the screen with increasing dread and concern. Liorio's head turned, his face panic-stricken as he could do nothing but watch. Rapidly advancing was a familiar red fishing float that struck Hisoka directly on the cheek, stopping him. Hisoka let out a shocked noise, as a small amount of blood spattered from where a bruise already began to form. Leorio broke his fall and hopped to the side out of Hisoka's range as the fishing pole drew back. Hisoka remained standing as if stuck in time. Shaky breathing came, as a small figure could be seen in the fog. "Gone?" Leorio said, alarmed. The boy in question stood panting, a serious expression on his face. "Did I get here on time?" Quote, "Gone?" Question mark. Nijire said, voice rising suspiciously. "He got there after all. This isn't gonna be good," Tamaki said reservedly, his body strung tight from tension. Uraraka watched with apt attention, her emotions swaying wildly. "I can't even be relieved that Leorio didn't get hurt because now Gon's here. He can't fight that man." Quote. Hisoka let out a short groan, before turning his face, his smile seeming to have stretched even wider. "Not bad, little boy," he said, voice nearly whispering. Gon clutched his fishing pole, frowning at Hisoka's slight jab. "Is that a fishing pole?" "What a fascinating weapon," Hisoka said, although met with silence. He began to walk to Gon. Gon watched him, expression firm. Hisoka held out a hand. "Let me see it." Gon held onto his pole tighter. God, could he be any creepier? Exclamation mark. Jiru growled out, feeling a protective urge to hold Gon close, despite being separated by the screen. "Your fight is with," Leorio began, taking a stand from where he was crouched earlier. "Me?" Leorio yelled out, rearing the stick once again as he charged at Hisoka's back. A forceful impact was heard, and Leorio's face twisted, his glasses knocked off, as Hisoka's fist cocked in the air from the punch he delivered. "I think I just experienced second-hand pain," Kaminari said, wincing. "That certainly was a mean hook," Kirishima added with a sympathetic look of his own. Leorio flipped in the air, as Hisoka brought down his arm. Without sparing a second, Gon yelled out, jumping in the air as he swung at Hisoka with his fishing pole. Once again, the man dissolved into smoke. Gon's eyes widened, and as he landed on his feet, Hisoka was standing several feet behind him. Gon turned to look back at where he was standing. "Here to help your friend?" Hisoka's voice came from his left. Startled, Gon looked to his right, before turning and seeing the man behind him, his chin resting on his hand as he smiled knowingly. "I somehow doubt it's magic that's making him move so fast it seems as if he's teleporting," Suyu riveted, a blank look on her face that revealed nothing. "He's pretty into this whole magician thing," Spinner mumbled, watching the smoke left behind by Hisoka with apprehensive eyes. Gon jumped back, holding his fishing pole in front of him defensively. "Such a good boy," Hisoka's voice teased as he appeared directly behind Gon once more, his posture lax. Gon swiped at him, only to be met with nothing but smoke dissolving again. Gon watched with a confused and slightly desperate expression. Hisoka seemed to simply glide on screen, once again across from Gon. "I love the look on your face," he crooned again, arms crossed with a confident look. Sir Night Eye frowned at Hisoka's tone a bit. Vlad Kind shifted a bit uncomfortably, coughing into his closed fist before settling with a gruff look. "Getting real freaky energy here, and not the fun kind," Magna said, quirking an eyebrow. Gon noticed him, then grit his teeth, casting out his fishing line as he attacked Hisoka at long range, jumping back to create more distance. The boy swung continuously, yelling out. Hisoka walked towards him, avoiding the attacks nonchalantly. Nice, he said, as he leaned to the side. Very nice. His golden eyes opened up, creasing at the corners. I'm getting excited now. His head tilted to the side again to avoid the flying fishhook. Okay, Gon affirmed to himself, before he raised his fishing pole above his head and cast out the line again. Hisoka watched, the smile on his face sly as ever as he advanced. I'm really not liking this guy, Mirio said, his teeth clenching a little too tightly against each other. All Might could feel his nails digging deeper into his palms, threatening to pierce the calloused skin. Gon poses no real challenge to him. He's merely toying with him, the retired hero said. The line flew in the air, before dropping abruptly several feet ahead of where Hisoka was. It disturbed the ground as dust and dirt flew up. Hisoka was unreadable as he looked at the sight. Gon appeared behind him, yelling out with his pole above his head, rearing back for a sneak attack. As he bared down, a pale hand with sharp nails reached out and seized. Gon's shout cut off unnaturally, his eyes looking with shock as he remained midair. Hisoka's muscled arm appeared outstretched, with the sound of Gon's pole clattering to the ground. Choked sounds came from Gon. Oh mon Dieu, Aoyama said, gasping lightly as his expression tightened from his usual lax and teasing smile. They should have just ran, Midoriya gritted out, his hold on the notebook threatening to rip it to shreds. More likely a reflex for him than anything. Being temporarily caught off guard by the makeshift smokescreen. I honestly didn't expect the child to try anything other than his futile swinging, all for one thought to himself, interest peaking slightly. The man held up Gon with one arm by the neck, Gon's legs uselessly kicking in the air, as his hands clutched Hisoka's arm. The young boy's eyes were shut tight, as he fought against the hold. Hisoka chuckled, a smile returning to his face, even nastier than before. How wonderful, he said, his voice shaking with excitement. Gon continued to struggle, opening an eye to look at the magician. His grip tightened, an obscene look on his face that tinged slightly red, a Chesser's grin wide. I love the look on your face, he groaned. Okay, this guy's a fucking pedo or something, Bakugo grunted out, casting an annoyed and angered expression at the screen. Talk about pervert, Midnight trailed off, sighing a bit. After a few moments of silence, she realized the poorly hidden skeptical looks cast her way. Oh, come on. Seriously, you guys? There's no way I'm anything like that. Sure, I do say some things here and there, but I'm mostly teasing. You've never heard me say anything like that in such a nasty tone, she hastily defended herself, from the looks coming from hero students and teachers alike. Guys, he's still choking Gon out. Mina said, her voice tinged with frenzy. Gon looked at him, struggling against his grip, before slipping his eyes just going limp in Hisoka's grasp. Hisoka noticed, snapping out of his moment. He loosened his grip, dropping Gon to the ground. The young boy fell to his hands and knees, coughing violently. Hisoka bent down. Don't worry. Gon looked up at him, still recovering. Away from them, Leorio lay on the ground unmoving. I didn't kill your friend. He passed, Hisoka stated, eyes filled with glee. He laughed softly, looking at Gon's cautious expression. What is he talking about? Shinso uttered, wary. Who cares, at this point you just go with what he says and hightail out of there. Kaminari shuddered, the pit in his stomach heavy at the near-death experience Gon just had. Yes, you pass, as well. Go on and become a good hunter, the trickster said, in a far too cheery manner. A high-pitched beeping could be heard. Hisoka reached for something, a click being heard. Hisoka, you should get back here. We're almost at the site for the second phase, a distorted voice came through a walkie-talkie device. On the screen, a red dot flashed. "Okay, I'll be right there," Hisoka spoke back to the device. With a click, he stood back up, and walked away. "It's good to have friends," he said to Gon, who watched wordlessly. Leorio was slung upon Hisoka's back. "Can you find your own way back?" Quote. "What?" Uraraka asked, confusion rising. Who was he talking to? Ojiro questioned. Murmurs rose from the class of students. Pass? Is he serious or, what's going on? Iida said, thoughts running wild. He's taking Leorio with him, All Might said, his voice coated with slight surprise. This doesn't make any sense, Sato said, his eyebrows cinched together tightly as he watched. Gon continued to peer at him, before nodding once. That's a good boy, Hisoka said at Gon's response. He turned around and walked away, the unconscious man still on his shoulder as he faded into the fog. Gon let out the breath he was holding, panting heavily. Sweat dripped down his face, as he stared into the direction Hisoka and Leorio disappeared. Gon. Are you alright? Kurapika shouted as he ran back at him. Gon looked back. His shaky heavy breathing could be heard clearly. No shade, but dude, they could have seriously used your help even a minute ago, Shiro noted, closing his eyes. Hisoka's peculiar, Todoroki said, not being able to find a proper word for the dangerous man that exited the scene. The fog began to fade and the trees in the area became clearer. A hand clicked close a walkie-talkie device similar to Hisoka's. A torso was only shown as the figure shoved the device back into their pocket, the badge number 301 only visible. In the back, Kahlua wandered around, searching. Oh man, Gon really isn't here, he said, a bit disappointed. Little chatter rose amongst the crowd of applicants that had finally come to a stop, many of them panting and groaning. Satat stood away from them, looking down at his watch. He blinked, looking back up at the pathway where several applicants were strewn across, desperately trying to make it in time. The end of Phase 1 must be here, Tokiyami said, eyes glued to the new surroundings. Time's running out, hopefully they'll make it in time, Momo said, remembering the closing wall of the tunnel. Birds could be heard chirping along with various other sounds of nature, as running footsteps were heard. Gon ran with his nose held high in the air. This way, the boy said, turning on a pathway as Kurapika followed behind him. You can really tell? Kurapika asked him. Yup. Leorio's cologne is very unique. I can smell him a few kilometers away, Gon explained. The two continued running down the pathway, Leorio's briefcase having found its way back onto Gon's fishing pole. The fog's completely gone, Eri timidly said, eyes hopeful. I know they're going to make it. They've got this. Kirishima encouraged, his expression lightening up as well. Gon's sense of smell has got to be abnormal, kilometers? Shoji stated, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Hey Kurapika, what did Hisoka mean when he said that we passed? Gon asked, his eyes focused straight ahead. Kurapika looked at him for a moment, before fixing his gaze back on the pathway. Hisoka was probably playing judge, the blonde told him. A judge? Yes. The screen became pitch black, deep red slitted eyes and an even slimmer grin appeared. It faded into the shadow of Hisoka's face. He must have his own benchmarks for evaluating power. The flashback of the applicants surrounding Hisoka played again. He did say something similar to those former applicants, Juru said, mood dampening at the reminder of what happened to the applicants who had circled and went up against Hisoka. He told them that he would play examiner, Midoriya said, in deep thought. It's possible that he was measuring each applicant's strength. Apparently you and Leorio must have met his standards. The scene faded back to the two running on the pathway. I see. But I was powerless to do anything against him, Gon spoke. Didn't you land your first hit on him? Quote. Only because I surprised him, Gon responded. Besides, Leorio passed, even though he lost. A contemplative look crossed Kurapika's face. Perhaps he sensed that you were kindred spirits. Gon's eyes flitted over to his friend. Kindred spirits? Quote. Kindred? There's no way he means that Hisoka and Gon are similar in any way, Mina stated stubbornly, crossing her arms resolutely. Not in the way you think, Midoriya said, looking back up. Mina casted him a curious gaze. I am not quite sure yet if he means it in that way, so, Midoriya spluttered. Don't doubt yourself, my boy. All Might chipped in, a merry smile finding a way on his face. I seriously doubt that Hisoka could qualify as a hunter, Kurapika began, his eyes appearing sharp as ever. A flashback of Hisoka standing calmly holding a card moments before the applicants attacked appeared. However, I must admit that he did impress me with his superhuman agility and graceful technique. The flashback of Hisoka's hand rising and swiftly cutting down the attackers in a clean circle appeared again. A bright light flashed its shine expanding widely across dark space. It's quite common that those who possess special talents are drawn to others with unique gifts. Two other lights in differing colors appeared, their shine intermingling with the first. Midoriya cleared his throat, drawing back most attention in his direction. I think what Kurapika is trying to say is that Hisoka most likely didn't kill them because of their fighting spirit. Leorio is most definitely hot-headed, but I'm pretty sure he was still thinking logically enough to know he was outmatched, the green-haired boy explained. Gon demonstrated the same by not giving in, despite seeing how skilled Hisoka was in evading him without any real difficulty. In fact, I do believe if Gon were to cower in the slightest, Hisoka would not hesitate to finish him, Nedzu completed. Most likely, Hisoka's instincts and experience told him that you had the skill and potential to become hunters. The scene replayed of Leorio attacking Hisoka only to be met with a vicious fist. The scene of Gon fighting in Hisoka's grasp as he was held up by the neck. The flashbacks ended, as Kurapika came back to view. Killing you now would have been a waste. That might be his perspective. Gon didn't utter a word at Kurapika's explanation, as he continued running ahead. So instead of killing them now, he'd rather kill them later when they have proved themselves to him, Mr. Compress said, humming a bit. Why the fuck would you let a filler villain level up to a finale boss? Shigaraki scoffed. Kurapika startled, realizing his words. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that insensitive on my part? Quote. No, but I was pretty excited back there as well. Kurapika made a quizzical noise. I was so scared, I wanted to run away, but I couldn't. And at the same time, I was excited. Isn't that strange? Gon said, turning around to look at Kurapika with a wide smile on his face. Aizawa's mouth twisted weirdly at Gon's phrase, before sighing and shaking his head. Of course. Of course, rather than fear for his life and wish to never be caught in another moment like that, he felt excitement. Idiot problem child. All of them, the man thought broodingly, eyes glaring at the screen before him. On both sides, Ari and present Mike leaned away respectively from the glooming pressure radiating off the erasure hero. Kurapika looked at him with an expression of unexpectedness. The two jogged down the pathway, long and winding, that stretched all the way down to a large building in the far distance. At the site were the crowd of applicants. Satat stood with a hand behind his back. Once again he checked his watch. The two boys jogged down the path, heads held high. Crap, that doesn't look like the short distance I was expecting it to be at all. Kaminari exclaimed. He flinched and smiled nervously at the deadpan expression of the teachers, who were not impressed with his slight curse. Sorry. For the first time in his life, Gon experienced mortal fear. Though the unfamiliar feelings accompanying that fear confused Gon, he cannot restrain his growing curiosity. The two ran down the pathway, frozen in time, as Hisoka's foreboding stature appeared in the background, a crafty expression with Leorio's slung over his back. At this stage, 220 candidates have withdrawn from the exam, leaving 148 applicants. The screen faded to dark again, lights filling the theater room. Bakugo blinked once before saying, "Holy shit, I wasn't expecting that many people to fail the fucking first part." Many of them didn't just fail but rather died. I wonder what will happen to the bodies, Momo said, still shaken at the amount of people who dropped dead, quite literally, in the exam. I really believed that the examiner was just bluffing about that. Even so, so many people died. There should have been a much bigger warning about how dangerous the exam is. Uraraka said, her voice rising, as she got frustrated. As the levels progress, they're most likely just going to get more difficult, and deadlier, Tokiyami said gravely. The class felt a heavy, almost physical weight bear down onto them at the increasing danger the exam actually posed. The teachers were in a similar conversation of their own. There's many who are likely in those woods without a way of direction, and will eventually get preyed upon by the creatures, Vlad King said, his voice low. If I knew exactly who functioned this entire exam, they'd hear a thing or two from me, Recovery Girl fumed. It's one thing for grown adults to agree to something so stupidly dangerous, but to allow children as young as Gon and Kahlua entrance to something is outrageous. I couldn't care less if he was more qualified than all of the other applicants there. Children will always lack the full comprehension adults possess simply because they are children and underdeveloped. Quote. Nedzu nodded along in agreement. While sometimes his own imagination about how to further challenge the hero students went off the deep end frequently and had questionable methods, he never even entertained a thought on anything that would seriously injure or maim his students. Let alone kill. As popular as it seems the Hunter exam is, I'd find it hard for the proper authorities to have no knowledge of the senseless deaths. All Might trailed off. That is if there are any proper authorities to begin with, Gran Torino grumbled. Assuming the first phase is over with, I don't know how many people are even gonna end up seeing the end of this thing. Over half of the people that started are gone, either failed or dead, Present Mike said, letting out a heavy exhale. All Might heaved a heavy sigh and looked down at his clasped hands. Is the exam truly worth it, young Gon? Hopefully your spirits and courage will push you past your limits, the former number one thought to himself. Toga bounced in her seat excitedly. Wow, I thought this whole Hunter exam thing was gonna be a bust, but it's been so cool. People can die in real funny ways, she chirped, eyes razor sharp. compress sighed lightly, as he sat back finding himself thoroughly intrigued. Hisoka is certainly a man well versed in illusions and trickery. How quickly he moves reminds me of nothing but sleight of hand, the man sighed, fiddling around with a random marble he carried in his coat pocket. Gotta say, he's one creepy fuck. He's almost as bad as Boss, Dabi said nonchalantly, ignoring the pissed-off sounds coming from Shigaraki. He's terrifying. Who the fuck's gonna take a failed clown-turned-magician seriously? Twice added, ever contradicting himself. The conversation was cut short, with the light flickering off once more, and the screen coming to life. Unfortunately, this part is over. I hope you enjoyed it. My apologies for all those quotes. Please have a good morning, afternoon, evening or night. See you next time, faves.